You're listening to Leadership Recalibrated, where we dismantle outdated leadership playbooks and explore the new way to lead. I'm Lori Lalonde, founder of Her Executive Ascent, and I created this podcast because I was tired of hearing the same recycled advice about what it takes to be a good leader. You know the scripts: be more confident, lean in, develop executive presence. But what if those scripts were written for a leadership model that no longer works? What if the future of leadership looks less like commanding authority and more like strategic influence, emotional intelligence, and authentic power? Each week, we take on the questions most leadership programs avoid, the power dynamics nobody teaches, and the decisions that actually shape your career. This is where you stop following the old rules and start designing the leadership career that fits who you are now and where you're going next. Let's recalibrate. Today's guest is Lisa Boate, founder of Liberated Menopause, host of Transforming 45, and co-host of the Unmuted podcast. She helps organizations create menopause-empowered workplaces through professional learning, policy development, and the kind of honest conversations that shift culture, not just checkboxes. Drawing on her 20-year career as an educator, she brings clarity, compassion, and real-world strategy to leaders who want to better support their midlife employees and strengthen retention, performance, and well-being. Based in London, Ontario, Lisa fuels joy through spending time with the wise women in her life and hosting dance parties in her kitchen to 80s and 90s tunes. Let's get into it. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Lori. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. And I bet you a number of women that are listening are going to be just as excited to hear what we have to say today. So before we start, I know a lot of us hear the terms perimenopause and menopause, but don't fully understand what they mean. So can you break that down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important question, especially around the term perimenopause, because I don't know about you, but it certainly was not even in my vocabulary until probably 5, maybe 6 years ago, when I started to hear it sort of filtering. And it's a really important time. But what I'm going to start with is menopause, because menopause itself is actually one day. And it is the one day when you have not had a cycle for 12 months. And that is the signal of, I'm now menopausal, and I move into post-menopause. There's some conversation in the community around, do we call it post-menopause or do we just call it menopause? Because there's sort of this feeling when people move into post-menopause of like, oh, that's done, it's over, it's behind me. And that's not true. Post-menopause requires just as much care, and there is a lot of care that is necessary in that stage that doesn't get talked about because people think, oh, that's behind me. So menopause is the one day. Post-menopause is the rest of your life, right? It's a third, essentially. It is a third of your life that can be spent in this time of estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin deprivation, essentially, which leads to things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes. They're looking at connections now to Alzheimer's and dementia because those numbers are much higher for women than they are for men. Osteopenia, osteoporosis. So the lack of estrogen, which is what happens, right? So that menopause date, it's because now we don't have egg supply is gone, and we don't have the estrogen to create those communication channels anymore. Post-menopause is the repercussion of all of that because our bodies are covered in estrogen neuroreceptors, tip to toe. So there's not a single system in our body that is not impacted by the decline of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Now we're also talking about oxytocin and serotonin, which are things I wasn't even talking about a year ago. So we are learning lots more. We continue to need to learn more, but we do absolutely know the long-term impacts of estrogen deprivation. Okay, so that's menopause, post-menopause. Perimenopause is the time leading up to menopause, and it can last up to a decade. So that is a key piece of information because one of the main things I hear is women who are starting to have perimenopausal symptoms, and I'll talk about those in a minute, will go to their healthcare practitioner, and their healthcare practitioner will say, you are too young. It's something else, and let's prescribe birth control or an antidepressant. Those are the two things that I hear the most. So being armed with this information is really key. The average age of menopause is sort of 48 to 52. And again, every woman's journey is going to be completely different, but we can speak in averages. So that's the average. So if you back that up by 10 years, in your late 30s, it is entirely possible that you are experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. Dr. Mary Claire Haver does a really good job of describing perimenopause as peri-chaos, because that is what's happening to the communication systems within your body. So hormones are the great communicators in our body. That's their job. They go from brain to gut to every place in your body and tell your systems what to do. And estrogen for us is the great regulator, protector, communicator of everything. So when estrogen starts to decline, none of those communication systems work the way they had been working, which is why we experience things like brain fog, like word recall issues. Dr. Lisa Mosconi is the lead researcher, one of the lead researchers who's been doing the work around the impact of declining estrogen in the brain. And interestingly, what happens is as estrogen declines, estrogen neuroreceptors increase, right? Because their job is to grab that estrogen and say, hey, but when that estrogen isn't available, they're like, something's going on, we must need more receptors. So brain is spending all of this energy creating receptors that are never filled. So of course, we're experiencing neurological symptoms, depression, right? There is almost never a time or after a session that I facilitate, someone comes up to me and says, Lisa, I thought I was in the early stages of dementia. Almost always.
I've heard that from a number of women in the same age stage of life as I am. And I mean, that runs in my family, so it is a big concern. And when I was first experiencing these symptoms, I felt the same way. And if it wasn't for the amazing women online that are advocating and educating women on what we're experiencing right now, I would have had no idea how to proceed, how to go forward. Dr. Jen Gunter, Dr. Haver, you as a menopause coach are doing that work as well. It is a scary time, when we feel like we're losing our brain activity, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I had my partner who actually said to me, I think you have dementia and you need to go seek help about that. But I was already well into my menopause care or perimenopause care that I had the education and knowledge to understand what my body's doing and how I'm addressing it. And I simply just responded with, you need to get educated because even though this isn't happening to you, you need to understand what's happening to me and I don't have time to educate you. Full stop. Right? I did just not accept that kind of, I guess, diagnosis
Well done with that
from him.
boundary. I am
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
There's not enough information, and we were not taught this growing up. I looked at menopause as, yes, it's when you're in your 50s, you don't get your period anymore, you get hot flashes, and then things even out. But that's not the case, like as what you're saying. This requires the rest of our life care, and we need to be armed with knowledge and facts. And for women that aren't getting that care, it's impacting them. I would love to hear
Absolutely.
from you, on that note, because it is such a tumultuous time. It is really like it knocks you off balance for the day. I'm wondering what you're seeing when you're working with high performing women who are navigating perimenopause. They're in leadership roles. There are many out there that have to lead teams, lead portfolios, businesses. How are they navigating that? And what are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's a range of things, obviously, and there's also there's the biological, and then there is the like spiritual, emotional component as well, because it's not just impacting our physical bodies. What's happening to our physical bodies is impacting our identity. So there's both sides of that. When like we were talking about, for women who are in leadership positions, who are or working with other humans, part of their job is communicating. Most of us have to communicate at some point or other in our work. Some of the biggest impacts I hear are those. They are the brain fog and the word recall issues, because suddenly you have had access to a vocabulary that helps to form how you communicate with the world and how people see you. Right? I certainly can speak to this from my own experience. Suddenly, I couldn't recall words, and I felt like my vocabulary was shrinking. And who am I now if I can't present myself in the way I always have? So it has a significant impact on confidence. It has an impact on the way we think the people around us see us. It has impacts on personal relationships as well as professional relationships. I work with a lot of educators. I was an educator for 20 years, and that is the field that I work with predominantly at the moment to support. And there's a lot of collaborative relationships that happen in a school, in a classroom, and suddenly you have a teaching partner who is looking at you like, who are you? You are not the same person I worked with a year ago. And the issue is that no one has any language to talk about it. So that's where conflict can arise. That's where we get this statistic from the Menopause Foundation of Canada that 1 in 10 women are leaving the workforce due to unsupported menopause and perimenopause symptoms. And if we look at the large structures of organizations, we see that, right? Who are the majority of folks who are in senior leadership positions?
Men.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have men who are leading, who have no lived experience for what this is like, have no idea that it's happening. So obviously have no strategies for how to talk about it. And that's where professional development for organizations, like not just the women, this is one of the areas where I'm working like for advocacy, is yes, we can do sessions with women so that they know and understand what's happening with their bodies and have the language to talk about it. But this is not just our responsibility to hold. This affects the entire organization, the entire community, the entire family. So we all need to know what's happening and have language structures so we can talk about it in ways that feel respectful and safe on both sides. We're just taking baby steps towards policy, having policy in place that is supportive of women so that if they choose that this is what they want to stay in the workplace, then they don't have to, on top of everything else they're experiencing, have to advocate for it as well. There's already policy in place that is supportive.
I love that. You touched on so many things there. I want to dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
I love the idea of corporate training for all, and it should be required training.
Yes.
Are you seeing a trend moving in that direction? Are you working with organizations to bring that training in-house?
I am working with organizations to do that. I would say currently it's majority women who are coming to the sessions. And then there's a few, I'm going to call them brave souls at the moment, who are entering into those spaces. So I've done a lot of work with the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. And so I think it's important to really lift them up for the work that they're doing because there's a significant focus on this for them. I was doing a lunch and learn and there was 1 or 2 men who came to that session. Great. It's a good start. I was working with a municipality and their fire chief came to the session, which I thought was really great to be able to support a very marginalized population of his workforce. So at this stage, I would say everything is tiny steps, right? Tiny steps, but there are things that are moving forward. But one of the areas that really needs some more work is inviting everyone to this conversation and saying, yeah, this isn't just for women. Like, this is an organization. This is a community conversation. Because when you think about the value of a woman in your organization who is at this stage in their career, it's unmeasurable, right? They have had education, decades of experience, the institutional knowledge that they hold, capacity to build relationships within the organization, and a lot of the time also to other collaborative organizations. These women are really important to organizations. And when they walk out the door, they take all of that skill, knowledge, and wisdom with them. So it is of benefit to everyone to create spaces where women can stay and continue to lead and to educate and to support.
I'd love to see organizations take it a step further to make it required training for all, not just the people who opt in, because even though it doesn't impact men directly in their bodies, it impacts the business. It impacts how you work with people or understand what people are going through in order to better support them. Uh,
Absolutely.
100%. I even told, I have a group of friends who are predominantly male because I was in the software industry. And so that's just by nature. And as I was going through all of this and seeking out care outside of the traditional Western medicine in order to get the treatment that I needed that helped me, I was telling my male friends, you better not be asking your wife or your partner to explain to you what's going on. Do not diagnose. Do not assume. Educate yourself, read a book, and understand what she's going through and support her through that. I better not hear any of you acting a fool, okay? Like, because it's hard enough to go through this. And you're right, it takes a hit to our confidence and even our health. I remember getting blood work and I was always pretty good as far as cholesterol levels and things like that. I remember getting blood work back where my cholesterol was just awful. And my nurse practitioner, who's a woman, said to me, oh, it must be genetic or it must be because of your diet or your exercise. I'm like, I've changed nothing and it is not genetic. I believe it's related to me being in this stage of life.
Yes.
And she at the time had said, I don't think so. So she wanted me to try different things. I did. Nothing moved the needle. I went to a wellness clinic that focused on and specialized in menopausal and perimenopausal care for women. I got the treatment I needed. I was put on HRT.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, that's life-changing.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely life-changing. And then the blood work after, she had acknowledged that the cholesterol levels were evening out. She's like, yeah, what did you do different? And I said to her, here's what I'm doing. Here's the medication I'm on. Here's who I'm working with. And I will have them share all of the notes there with you because that was the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I'm teaching my nurse practitioner in real time, which is fine. But I mean, ultimately, I'd like to see that progress with doctors and the nurse practitioners in, the medical field be more open to learning about it and understanding what women are going through and treating it accordingly.
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. This is such a huge part of my practice. So there's the part where I work with and do professional development and keynote speaking for organizations. And the individual work that I do with women mostly is through a session that I have called Dr. Ready. And that's where women come to me and we spend an hour and we go through their whole perimenopausal experience. And I give them the language that they need to have conversation with their healthcare practitioner. And I also send them with the research so that they can give that to their healthcare practitioner, because the conversation more often than not is, I said it at the beginning of the interview, doctors are really ready to prescribe an antidepressant. They also, and this is one of the big sticking points for me that I get really frustrated about, they will prescribe birth control, right? No problem. Birth control has significantly higher levels of estrogen and progesterone than HRT does. It is such a paradox. It makes me so frustrated. And yes, we are having to educate our healthcare practitioners when we go to them. I have moved recently, so I have a new healthcare practitioner. My former doctor was brilliant and she knew exactly what to do. And I am anticipating, when I have my appointment in February, having to say, this is what I need. This is what I need you to prescribe. And for me, it's okay. I have the knowledge. I can do that. But when you are someone who is struggling with joint pain and digestion issues and can't sleep and like random weakness, right? There's so many things, frozen shoulder, right? So many women who I've talked to have said, oh yeah, frozen shoulder. I totally have that. And my doctor said I just have to deal with it, that it'll go away eventually, when the root cause is the deprivation of estrogen. It's so important, but that's one of the things we can thank the WHI study for. So, for listeners, I know this is becoming more common knowledge, but in the early 2000s, there was a study with really good intentions. It was the largest funding for women's health in history at that point. And they were specifically looking at how to decrease cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteopenia, osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. And they also were looking at the impacts of HRT. Unfortunately, there were results from a very specific study that where the majority of the women in that study were already postmenopausal. So already had higher instances of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteopenia, osteoporosis. They saw that there was a slightly increased risk of those women having strokes and breast cancer. That information was really misrepresented in the media. So within about a year or two, the levels of HRT being prescribed went to essentially zero. And because there was no longer a pharmacological way of treating, for lack of a better word, menopause, they just stopped teaching about it in medical school. So we have decades of healthcare practitioners who have almost like next to zero education, including endocrinologists and including gynecologists. So this is another thing people will say to me, oh, my doctor is referring me to an OBGYN. And I shake my head because there's this additional layer of waiting and having to go see someone who quite likely also has no idea. It's only now, I think that there are conversations starting about how to include menopause into medical school and into training. So it will be quite some time still before the entire system has a baseline understanding.
100%. And I'm grateful that even at this stage, we have bioidentical hormones for
Yes.
HRT. I had no qualms about taking them. And I have a high risk of breast cancer. It runs in my family. But I cannot live like this. Like the pains that you're talking about, the joint pain, brain fog, restless sleep. The restless sleep's the worst, the hot flashes. And I even had trigger finger. I didn't get frozen shoulder, but I had trigger finger. And I was devastated because I am like, wow, everything's breaking down, everything at once. And I
Mm-hmm.
know women who have had frozen shoulder, and the response was, well, we'll just give you a steroid shot. And I had to get a steroid shot for my trigger finger because it was just getting worse. And it was like, yeah, that's just how it is. I don't subscribe to that. I have an OBGYN, like I go to see my gynecologist every year, and he would look at me like I had two heads when I asked about the different symptoms and what is this? How do I deal with it? And it was just like deer in headlights. No answers. I'm grateful I was able to find a clinic, but it is a private clinic that practices in menopausal care and perimenopausal care in women. And I'm fortunate and privileged that I have the funds to pay for something like that. Not everybody does.
No, and herein lies the problem, right? So similarly, like I deeply believe and value public healthcare, right? We need to value that and advocate for it. And at the same time, women deserve to get the care that they need to feel well. And that is something I hope that people always take away from any conversation I have with them is that you deserve to feel good in your body. You don't have to suffer, right? The narrative for women, especially in our generation, is that of suffering. Actually, my husband and I were having this conversation last night. It's so funny because he and I are really like in it right now about I'm like, dude, you need to start taking care of yourself. You need to start working out. You need to move your body. You need to do these things. And he's like, oh, but I'm sore the next day. I don't like it. And it was these conversations with him that helped me to understand that we are trained to see suffering as value, right? Like every step in our, the first pair of high heels, right? It's painful, but you're going to look great. Makeup, your first period, putting in a tampon. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it feels weird, but you're going to do that so you can just carry on, right? Every single thing. Like when you really look back through, it is this training of your body is meant to be uncomfortable. You are meant to suffer. And it's something that, again, speaking in broad terms, Are there men who suffer in their bodies? Absolutely. Of course there are. And it also, for many, is a totally foreign experience. So they just don't have an understanding. So when we come to menopause, it's like, oh, well, this is just the next thing that we have to suffer through, because that is what we have been taught, that it's just the way it is. And this is the time for us to say, actually, it's not. I am done with the suffering. I'm long over it. And there are solutions to these symptoms that I am having. And so that was a long way around to say, I'm glad that the private clinics exist so that women can get the care that they need. And all women deserve to be able to access that care.
Yeah. And right now, we're lucky to have the internet. We're lucky to have professionals like you online that are sharing your knowledge and educating others. And I would say to women right now, you don't accept when your doctor blows it off and says, you're just going to have to power through it. I actually had my nurse practitioner say that to me. You're just going to have to power through it. No, you don't. You have to advocate for yourself, arm yourself with the knowledge that you are receiving from these professionals online. They're giving it out for free. It's amazing. Take that with you and advocate. You have to, because we are in a position where we are like raising holy hell about it, because yes, Gen X women are at the point where we're like, we are not tolerating this, but the next generation will benefit from us advocating.
Absolutely. Yes. Their experience will be much different. And it makes me think also back to the conversation we were having about who should be included, like in the learning. And we were talking about men, but younger women also really need to be part of this conversation. And it's so interesting to me from this vantage point. And I can think back to when I was, in my late 20s, early 30s. And for sure, I would not want to have had these conversations because there's so much shame in it. There's so much devaluing of women when we get to this stage. And so I have empathy for and understand why younger women want to keep this at significant arm's length. At the same time, it is essential for their health and well-being, because the earlier women start putting practices into place, because it's not just hormone therapy. That is definitely one part of the conversation, but so is stress management, sleep, nutrition, and movement. Without those 4 components, HRT is actually not as effective. It can be helpful, it can help get things started, but the more we have good practices in those 4 key pillars, the better our long-term health outcomes are. And so for younger women to have that knowledge and know, because it is a lot easier to start creating and implementing a weight-bearing routine when you are in your, late 20s, early 30s. When you're not exhausted and burnt out from all the things that we've been carrying for all this time. And now I feel terrible. I'm exhausted all the time. My muscles hurt. And now you're telling me I have to start lifting weights?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Agreed.
It's really hard. And it is the number one thing that will improve your health outcomes. And for young women, it's the intergenerational learning that I just feel is missing in so many places and really needs to be present. And the advocacy for each other rather than trying to separate these stages.
Exactly. And I remember my mom did not speak about menopause. I didn't even know it when she went through it, how she went through it, what she experienced. No one from that generation in our family, the women, spoke about it. And when I was in my 20s and 30s, I think back now and I'm like, I used to work out because I just wanted to look cute and I just wanted to, be fit. And it was a different style of workout. And that doesn't work at this stage of life. And I learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sister, many of us have.
Like what worked for me in my 20s and 30s doesn't work for me today. And that's the HIIT workouts, the hard cardio. And it is more about intentional movement, stretching, it's resistance training, and weights. And yes, I did work out and incorporate some sort of weight and resistance training, but it was cute. It wasn't real. And what I cared most about was the cardio, just to look great
Burn
in my
calories.
clothes, not to feel strong, not to, think about range of motion and how my body's moving and intentionally ensuring that my muscles are all being activated at different points and when I in my movement and having a strong core. No, I just want to look cute. And so, yes, that education for younger women is a great point because the mindset shift is it's not about working out to be leaner to fit in your clothes. It's to support a strong body
That's right.
because you will pay the price for it later. And I used to love going to the gym until the pandemic hit. Pandemic hit, I was done. And I struggled to get back into it because of how many years really it took for us to get back to normal. By then, that's when I was feeling everything breaking down. And my thought was, how can I even do that right now when I'm in so much pain? That's where I learned about the different styles of moving,
Yes.
the importance of this type of training that it doesn't feel like you're doing a lot, but you are. It is
Yeah.
life changing.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be long periods of time, right? Like one of the things I had to work through was I would work out for an hour every day. And then I started noticing like I am just not recovering. Like this is leading to some chronic pain issues. And as I was doing my coaching training and learning about what's happening in the body, I was like, oh yeah, I am doing this to myself.
Yeah.
And so when, especially for Gen X women who our brains are marinated in diet culture, right? I'm making a point here. I'll come back around, I promise. But so my husband and I have been rewatching Beverly Hills 90210 from the beginning.
Nice.
And yeah, as one does when it feels like the world is burning down around us, right? Let's just escape into things that feel comfortable. So that's what
Yes.
we're doing. But in the very first episode, there is this scene of Brenda and her mom in the kitchen, and Brenda is cutting slices of kiwi, and she says, "How many calories are in every slice of kiwi?" And her mom immediately responds with 12 calories per slice. It was a crystallization for me of what we absorbed without ever even being aware of it. Our brains are so wired in that way. It can feel really hard. So for me to stop working out every day felt like I was, God, I don't even know if I have the words for it. Like I felt guilt, I felt shame, I felt all of these things, even though I'm really educated and I really know and understand why I need to do this and how it's actually going to be better for my body, which it is. So I work out 30 minutes resistance training 3 times a week. I walk almost every day. I have a really strong yin yoga practice now, which I would never have done before because similarly, I didn't feel like it was enough, right? Like I didn't feel like that was worth my time. But actually getting into joints and fascia is key for being able to do all the other pieces. And this mindset shift is particularly for women of our generation is a really hard one. And so don't feel like you have to do that alone. More than anything, that is the message. We also were taught you can do it all. You can have it all, and you're most successful if you do it totally on your own.
We were lied to.
Were we ever?
Yeah.
So reach out and connect with people who know and understand what's happening and develop a community like that. We've been talking about all the really hard things about perimenopause and menopause, and I never want to not talk about those. It's really important to acknowledge. And there also are some incredibly beautiful things that come at this stage, right? Community is part of it. Knowing yourself in new ways is part of it. Yes, confidence sort of shifts and changes. It feels like we're losing some skills, so we can be losing confidence, but there's also a groundedness that comes in like, okay, I've been on this planet for a while now. I know some things. I have some wisdom to share. So there are also all of those elements that are really powerful. And I think it's important to talk about those as well because people get really wrapped up in the fear of this stage and what's to come. And going back to why it's important for younger women to know and understand is it starts to eliminate the fear. When you know what's coming and you know how to prepare for it, and you know the really good things as well, then you don't face the kind of things that us and women before us have faced of like, I don't know what's happening to me. I just know that I'm not okay and I don't know who to talk to about it. Right. That's why this work is so important so that the women coming behind us won't have that wall of fear of what's happening to me now.
Yeah, exactly. My daughter's she's 30. Well, she's turning 30 in July, and she sees what I'm going through. And I said to her, "You're not far behind." So she has been very aware of what's coming. It's like a crystal ball looking into your future. And she is very intentional about managing and taking care of her health and well-being on all levels, emotional, mental, physical, in a way that works. And I remember coming down here, she was in the middle of her end of day stretching routine and she was watching a YouTube influencer. It was like senior stretching with Lauren or something like that. And I looked at it and I was like, "You're not a senior." And she goes, "It doesn't matter. These stretches are good for everybody and you should be doing them too."
I know when you said my 30-year-old was doing her end of day stretching practice, I was like, good for
Yes.
her. Because certainly I did not have that practice at that
Yes,
stage.
she has a morning routine to move her
Amazing.
body. She has a grounding in nature walk every day and her end of day stretching routine, as well as other resistance training. And so she's not exercising in the unhealthy way that I learned.
Yeah, the punishing
She
way.
she's doing it the right way now. And I'm
Yeah,
so proud of her and she inspires me and she nudges me quite a bit. Like, you didn't move enough today. And so when
that's
she's down here,
fantastic.
I'll join in.
I will say I got a text from my son yesterday. He's in his second year at the University of Guelph, so they're early 20s. And he was like, "Mom, these are three of my friends." So he texts a selfie of himself and three young women. And he's like, "Your videos popped up on their page the other day, and they insisted that we take a selfie and tell you that you're a total badass and you will have three clients in about 30 years." And I thought that is really powerful that they are seeing it and actually taking it in and doing some learning and appreciating it. That's a shift. And your daughter having that kind of practice as well is a shift that really gives me like hope for the women who are coming after us.
Yeah. And in the meantime, the Gen Xers that are suffering,
Yes.
I mean, we're still learning and navigating and trying to work within the existing structures and systems, which don't favor women. Obviously, like the corporate systems, the corporate world didn't was not built for women in any way. Is this impacting women as they think about their even their career trajectory? You know, you mentioned the confidence is
Yeah.
taking a hit. How is that looking when they're thinking about their roadmap for their career trajectory? Because they're in leadership roles, but maybe wanted to get to the executive level.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where patriarchy is really detrimental to all of us, right? And when I say, I think for so long, people have heard patriarchy and they think anti men, and it's not that at all. Like, patriarchy is a system of power and control that has been damaging for everybody. And when women are in this menopausal stage, it has significant impacts on their career. You know, I mentioned the stat earlier, 1 in 10 women, right? 1 in 10 women are leaving. I see myself in that number. Yeah,
I left. I
same.
think it was just it was that one day where I was just like, you know what? Not doing this.
Yes. And so I think it's important to look at it through both of those because there is this aspect of empowerment of I have been doing things that I know are like that I'm morally opposed to for a long time and I now have the power to say, yeah, I'm out. I will no longer be part of this system, which your story, my story. And there's also the other side of it of I don't feel like I have the skills that I can do this anymore. And so it can be really damaging. And sometimes the answer is like it was for you and for me, the right answer was to leave and start something new, right? I do not regret my decision and I would not have made a different one. And at the same time, it would have been nice to have been fully informed about what was happening. So, this is where menopause education, I actually feel, is freedom for everyone because it looks at how do we make spaces that actually value the humanity of the people doing the work. And this is where, you know, generational work is so interesting because Gen Z is having none of this,
I love that.
right? Like, they're having none of this garbage that we lived through. They're like,
I love it.
So for organizations, if they need to retain employees, right? And to do that, it's going to require a significant shift of culture. This like guilt and grinding yourself to the bone and wearing yourself ragged. It's not a structure that has ever been sustainable. And we see that in what's happening. I have a colleague who works for an insurance company who has been talking about the insane rates of breast cancer that currently are being seen within specific professions, much higher than the statistical averages. And so we see what this kind of workplace has done to our physical bodies. Some of the work I do is just talking about language and how we talk about it, knowing, naming, and taking action. So if I have had a really terrible sleep, I was having night sweats, I wake up in the morning, instead of pretending that that didn't happen and everything is fine, when I go into the workplace, I can have a conversation with my manager, colleague, whoever needs to be part of that conversation and say, hey, this is what happened last night. This is how it's showing up in me today. If you notice these things, this is how we can have a safe conversation about it. And I will likely need some help today. Imagine if that was the standard, right? When we go into our workplaces in the morning, there's this check-in of like, hey, where are you at today? Where are you at today? If you're like a person who had a great sleep and all is well at the moment, you're like, yeah, I'm at 100%. I can help whoever needs it. Then we have this shared responsibility for each other, which makes for a much kinder collaborative workplace, which has much better long-term results.
I agree 100%. And when I was in leadership, that was the mindset I tried to impart onto the team, the team culture. Number one was their health and well-being came first. If they were not well or not at 100% and felt like they needed the day off, there's no shame in that. There's no explaining it. I saw so many women trying to over-explain why they needed a sick day, and I would immediately stop them and say, I don't need to know. Those sick days are part of your compensation package. They are yours to take, no questions asked. Same with vacation, same with any additional personal days. And beyond that, if you're still struggling and you've gone through all of those, let's talk about options, right? They may need short-term disability leave if there's an ongoing chronic issue. I made it okay and not taboo to talk about that. And I encouraged every team meeting started with, have you booked your vacation time? And how are you using your paid time off? Make sure you do not lose it by the end of the year. And if someone was having a particularly hard day, I would start off with the one-on-ones with, how are you taking care of yourself in this moment? Because they would immediately start with, well, I did this and I did this, but I didn't get to this. I'm like, stop. How are you taking care of you right now? And just refocusing. And that was the way I approached things, because that's how I wish I was treated when I was in that position. I wish I had a manager like that. And of all the managers I've had, there were one or two that role modeled that for me, and it meant a lot. Not very many, though. In my early days, worked for the small consulting company. The owner was about punching in, punching out at the end of the day. We literally had a punch clock, like we were factory workers. And I got a call from the daycare saying, you need to come pick up your daughter. She's running a high fever. She needs to get to a doctor. I went to let him know, hey, I'm going to step out for a couple of hours, going to take her to the doctor, and then I'm going to settle her with her father because he's home. He worked night shifts, and then I'll come back. He looked at me and he said, I would be a real prick if I said no. I said, yeah, you would, and I'd go anyway. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just telling you what's happening. I grabbed my stuff and I left. And when I came back, he was waiting at my desk and he said, you need to mark today as a sick day. I said, absolutely not. I'm here. I was gone for 2 hours. One of them was my lunch hours. And I'm going to more than make up that hour of time, because he would give us extra work to do at the end of the day. And we would have the big brick laptops that we would have to take home and get that done by the morning. And we didn't get paid for that. We were salaried. We were not hourly.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mentioned that, he said, well, you can't bank your hours here. That's not how it works. He said, and if you don't mark today as a sick day, you're not getting paid. So true to his word, Friday rolled around and I did not get paid. I went straight to his office and he was waiting. He was so excited when he saw me walk up. He's like, oh, hi, Lori, what's up? I said, where's my paycheck? Because at that time, it was like the paper checks.
Yeah.
Where's my paycheck? And he said, I told you I wasn't going to have my accountant issue the check until you mark it as a sick day in the system. I said, absolutely not. I work way more than what you paid me for. If you can't pay me, my parents always said, don't work for somebody who isn't true, true to their word, who won't pay you. So I'm out. And then I literally just grabbed my stuff and went home, picked up the kids from daycare, went to my apartment. And at that time we had landlines. Yes, landlines. He was calling from the office because I saw the call display. I just picked it up and would hang it back up because I wanted him to know I was home. And there was no open discussion about this. There was not going to be a discussion. And he called back a few more times and I picked it up every time and hung it up. A couple hours goes by and he sends someone from the office to bring me my check and then to ask if I was going to be in on Monday morning. And I said, absolutely. But you let him know I'm looking for a new job. I cannot work for somebody that will withhold a paycheck like that. I depend on this to pay my rent and to put food on the table for my kids. And even back then, I was not having it. And I had no network, no connections, but my immediate thought was, I'm going to start applying for jobs everywhere. I'm going to go to the mall. I'm going to go to all the restaurants because I used to waitress. I will work anywhere, but I will not tolerate that. My family was always first. And that's the type of approach we need to see more of in corporate. But sadly, depending on who's in power or who your manager is, it dictates how they expect you to show up, or you're going to get a performance hit, put on a performance improvement plan, no bonus, no promotion, and they dangle that in front of you. I had a manager who said to me at one point when I was leading the team and doing that practice of putting them first, you care about people too much. You need to put that towards the business. And I said, there's not a limit on care.
I know this is not a zero-sum game, right?
I care about the business, but I care about the people. And when I care about the people and take care of the people, they take care of the business. And he said, it doesn't work like that. And he literally told me it wasn't meant for leadership.
And this is a perfect example of the patriarchal leadership system that we work in that isn't actually working for anyone. Well, unless you're like one of the top 10 companies and those billionaires. It's working great for them.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, they are incentivized to make sure that stays in place. But when we really look at what works at a population level, it is the leadership model that you are talking about. I had a similar experience where when I was leading a team and it was during COVID, we would meet every day. So we could check in with each other. What are you experiencing? How are you feeling? All of those things. And people on other teams saw that we were doing this and they were like, you're spending time doing that? Yes, of course, because we are living through a really traumatic thing. And to stay connected and know what each other's experiences are so we can support each other is a much more human and at the end of the day, impactful way of leading through a crisis. And that practice translates into not just crisis time, but any time. When you feed into people and let them know that they matter and they're important, then their work feels more important and they are more committed. Like there is study after study after study that proves this. And so for women at this stage, having that knowledge and knowing this, this emotion-led leadership is actually incredibly powerful and an incredible skill that not everyone holds. And yeah, we are in a time where it feels threatening to the status quo, right? I was told time and time again, Lisa, don't talk about emotions. And we're talking about an unprecedented time in education with children. No, don't talk about emotions. We're not going there. We're just teach them math and literacy. And we know so much more about how the brain works now. We know that when it is in a state of dysregulation, it is incapable of learning. It is incapable of doing the job. It is incapable of managing all the things. We know that. And so it's really frustrating to continue to be in this time of let's just keep doing the old thing that doesn't really work because it's what we know. And it's also a time of real opportunity. So yes, in work that I do, the entry point is through menopause, perimenopause, but these strategies, frameworks, are meaningful for everyone and can have real impacts on corporate culture that benefit the humans as well as the organization.
I love that. That's a vision that keeps me going of, changing corporate, changing the way everything was built because it wasn't built with, people first in mind, people at the core, and people are the engine of your business. Without people, what would you do? Even in this time where businesses think AI will replace people, no. And you're going to realize quickly that's not the case. You still need people. Gen Z's coming up and they need leadership that is transparent, that is empathetic, and that they feel that they can follow. If they don't see leaders that they feel they can follow or have values,
Hmm.
they're not doing it, like you said. And so there is a shift where there is a need for that. And women are naturally inclined towards that type of leadership. But unfortunately, as you said, women are opting out of corporate right now when they hit a certain level because it's just the stage of life we're in, plus the demands. We're relegated really to a caretaker role at some point, even when we are in leadership,
Hmm.
rather than being taken seriously to proceed to the next level. And then when they self-select out, who's left at the top? It's the men or a few of the women that are operating under the patriarchal playbook.
Yes. Yeah. It was some serious internalized misogyny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So leading into that, and this is how I love to end every show is to ask this question, but with the spin towards what we talked about today. If you can retire one leadership rule about how leaders are expected to show up, and especially one that doesn't serve women going through menopause, what would it be and what would you replace it with?
Put down the armor. And what I mean by that is, and I will use myself as an example. As a person who deeply values feeling and human connection and relationships in a space that values patriarchal structures of power, control, disconnection, dysregulation, I would have to put on armor, psychological armor to get through the day, which changed me. It made me harder. It made me like I would sometimes use my intelligence and my size. You can't tell because I'm sitting down, but I'm 5'10". And I would put on high heels so I'd be almost 6 feet tall when I had to go into spaces where I knew I would be challenged or that I knew were going to be hard. I would put on, my clothing armor. I'd put on my shoe armor. I'd go in so guarded. I would use my intelligence and my vocabulary and my language as a weapon to let everybody in that room know I'm smarter than you. And don't get it twisted. I know it. I know. Now, looking back on that and how energy expensive, the ends of those days, I would go home and be completely exhausted because I was playing a character all day. And for so many people, it's the character is a protectionist mechanism. That's how we protect ourselves, how we function in these spaces by doing things that we know are actually not effective and potentially harmful to the people around us. So I would say retire that rule that you have to put on armor and play the role and character of what you have seen in the leadership in front of you and take on your own authenticity. Will it be painful? Sometimes, but it also will let you actually be yourself and make real change in an organization that needs that change to happen.
Yes. Yes. I love that so much. Thank you, Lisa, for being on this episode today. This was an amazing conversation, and I could ask you so many more questions, and we could make it a multi-part episode, but I know you have things to do today.
I'm
So
happy to come back anytime.
love it. And for our listeners, you have your own podcast as well, but I'd love for you to share where people can find you and how they can work with you.
Yeah, so you can find me at liberatedmenopause.ca. That's my website that holds all of the other information. Instagram at lboat. That's also a great place to go. And yeah, I have a podcast called Transforming 45, which is a place where midlife humans come and tell their story of midlife transformation. Also lots of menopause, perimenopause conversation because that's what I do. And then on that website, you can also see ways to book me as a keynote speaker, as a professional development facilitator, and my one-on-one sessions are there as well. So there is the Dr. Ready option where we have an appointment to get you ready for your appointments with your healthcare practitioners. And the other piece of the one-on-one work I do is once you have come from your healthcare practitioner and you have all the information. So, how many of you have gone to your naturopath and or nutritionist or whoever it is, and you get like all of the instructions of what to do to feel better? And what's the next step?
You don't do it.
Exactly.
Guilty.
Because it's so overwhelming, right? It's so much information. And most of us haven't had a background in training in motivation and how to make small sustainable changes in your life. So that's the other piece that I do is when you are in that place of like, I don't know what to do next, I help you break down all of that information into small pieces. So it might be like you've got the whole plan from your nutritionist. Let's start with one small thing. If it's adding in more protein, we start with just that, right? And create daily habits and routines that help you to do that. And then we build and move on to the next thing. So that's what I do. And all of that is liberatedmenopause.ca.
Love that. Yes, yes, yes. We need this in our lives.
Yes.
Thank you again, Lisa. It was wonderful chatting with you today.
Thanks for having me.
The leadership advice that got many women this far will not necessarily get them where they want to go next. This phase of your career is not about working harder. It's about working strategically by deciding which rules still apply and which ones you are finally ready to outgrow. If this conversation resonated, stay with us, subscribe to the podcast, and join me here every Sunday for new episodes. And if it gave you language for something you've been carrying quietly, share it with another woman in your network who needs to hear it too. Until next time, lead with intention, question everything, and change the rules for the better. I'm Lori Lalonde, and this is Leadership Recalibrated.